Hey guys, Tyson here with Mod Call Digital. I got a little bit of a cold, so I'll be straightforward with you on that. If you're finding it a little difficult to hear me, then then that's why. So I'm probably gonna do about this tutorial should probably take about 30 to 45 minutes, maybe. The whole goal of this tutorial is to basically build out our prospect section. So I mean, in the last video, if you remember, we dealt a lot with users, logging in those users, making sure they can't access administrator content, by means of middleware, things like that. And yeah, so in this one, we're going to basically move on to the next step, and that is prospects, because now that we have our users and everything set up, the whole goal of a user is basically at this point in our CRM to work with a prospect. So that's what we'll build out next. So first thing I'm going to work on, first thing we're going to do here is we're going to work on the actual routes. So let me clear this out here. Okay, is we're going to start by working on the actual routes here. So we're going to want a route specifically for looking at all of our prospects in the table. So let's just build that template out quickly, and that'll be admin/prospects is where we're going to go there. And then we're going to direct to a prospects controller. We're going to look for a prospects controller, basically. So, yeah. Sorry, I'm having a hard time thinking here because, like I said, I got a little bit of a cold. So, and we'll name this one here. The name we'll give this route is basically admin.prospects. Okay. So let's go over to one of our views, to the main view, basically where we have our menu, which is an app.play.php here, if you remember. And we're going to want to direct over to that particular view. So we got users, we got clients. Let's put prospects before clients. All right, and then we'll do route, and then admin.prospects. Okay, and then same format, we'll do an H6 in there. Having a little formatting issues today, apparently. And then we'll give that a class of menu-item. And we'll say prospects. Let's use the same, we'll just use this icon for now. But we can go to Font Awesome maybe towards the end of this tutorial and switch that out. Okay. So if we go back here, this should pop up. Okay, so first of all, before we get too far ahead of ourselves here, let's create that controller. Now I'm going to do something a little different with this controller. I'm going to automatically populate our general CRUD functionality for this one. So the way we do that is, you'll see what I mean. Make, not resources, make controller. And then the name of the controller is going to be admin/prospects. Let me see here, prospect controller, and then we'll just go -r. We can go -r, or we could go -resources, and it's basically going to do the same thing for us. So let's go take a look at that specific controller, prospect controller. Okay, so by adding in resources there, we automatically get our index, create, store, show, edit, update, destroy, so on and so forth. So yeah, so I mean these are pretty straightforward as far as this works. So with the index is basically going to take us to a specific view. Actually, let's just say we can return welcome to the view. Okay, so let's check that works. So this should work now. Admin/users, let's click on prospects. Admin prospects controller does not exist. The reason the prospects controller does not exist is because it is prospect controller. Okay. Nope, having issues. So the link, so what is going on there? We have prospect controller under admin. And then we have admin prospect controller .php, admin.prospects. Okay. So what is going on there? And that takes us to prospects. I don't like that. Ah, there you go. Okay. So it still is labeled in there as prospects, but originally it couldn't find the controller because I had made a spelling error there. So prospect controller, not a big deal. Now let's go, we'll actually go and we'll create our review now for our prospect controller. So basically in the view, we're just going to want to show, say, maybe 10 or 12 results at a time. I'm going to say 10. 10 should lay out fairly nicely with the CRUD classes that we'll use specifically. So let's go into our views down here, admin, and under admin, we're going to want to create prospects.blade.php. All right, and then we're going to want to bring in our templates. So we'll use extends, and the location of our template is admin.layouts.app. Okay, and then we'll create our content section. Okay, we'll call that content. All right, perfect. Okay. So this is the user section, sorry, this is the prospect section. Let's make sure we actually return that view over in our prospect controller. So the view, so return view, which will be admin.prospects as the location of that specific view. Okay. So now, when we refresh this page, we should see this here, then this is the prospect section. Okay. So let's add a few, let's start by adding a few cards in there. We'll focus on like pagination and stuff after we create the table within the database for the prospects, and then we seed that database, which of course we've discussed before. So let's start out with a row class in Bootstrap. I'm going to use a for each. I'm going to use a for statement in this case. The for each statement will come, of course, when we actually have an object or an array of items there with the user's information. For I equals 0, as long as we'll put in 10, basically put in 10 of them in here, and then we'll just basically create a whole bunch of CRUD classes. So let's say dot column dash md dash 3. Probably going to want an offset of about 2, because this is just a card to basically display. Oops, not offset.2. Why is that not expanding for me? Dot column dash md dash 3 dot offset dash md dash 2. Okay, I don't know what's going on with what I got going on in here. So let's build this out here actually. So 3 dot d-2. Okay, there we go. And then we'll put our card class in here. Actually, let's no, for now we'll put our card class in there. That'll be fine. And then we're going to wrap it basically in an anchor tag so that by clicking on the card, you're going to go to the details about the particular prospect. So I'm just going to give this a little margin on the top with the bootstrap class there of MT3. All right, and then we'll do .card header. Oops. Dash header, and then within here we will print out a name of we'll just say John Prospect, and then in the body we've got the name already, so let's just put in like say a placeholder email and phone number. So we could do, so I'll wrap these in an H6. And we'll say phone number, we'll say 780-234-5678. And then we'll also do an H6 for email. And then the email will be okay. Now we'll copy this, we'll actually cut it. We'll put it in here. All right, so that's pretty clean, easy to read. Row, so when I'm looking for this again, that'll be easy enough for us to find. Okay. Okay, so this should pretty much display all of our prospects here. We'll have 10 prospects listed. So 10 times this will print out with the same details here on the actual prospects page. So let's click refresh. Perfect. So that looks more or less the way I want it to. I don't think it's like perfectly centered or anything, but you know, it's pretty close that way. So this is what it's going to look like, and then when we actually click on it, you know, we're going to go to a specific prospect page. So yeah, so that's pretty easy so far. Now, before I go to the prospect page, let's actually create our prospects table. So it's going to be a fairly big table because we're going to want to add, say, lots of information about the prospect or have the option to add information. And then, I mean, using the prospects table will also do things like, you know, say assign a specific user to that particular prospect or to that particular lead. So, so the way we can do that, so the way we're going to do that here is we're going to go PHP artisan. It's one of our artisan commands. We'll say make migration, and we're going to call this migration create prospects table. Okay, so that should show up in our migration here under our database folder. All right, perfect. So far, so good. So we're going to want to put in, you know, basically who was the one that was responsible for creating this particular user or this particular prospect. So, I mean, prospects, at the end of the day, we're going to want them to be created in two different ways. One, you know, any one of our team members or users can go in and create that particular prospect, or it can be generated through our API, which we'll look at later, you know, by means of a form that's filled out on the website. And then, you know, in a case like that, it won't be assigned to anybody specifically. Maybe we'll set it up so that the administrator can assign it, or we'll give him the option to basically lock up those prospects until he assigns it. Or who knows, maybe we'll create kind of a page that's a bin of prospects that the salespeople, the sales team can reach into and then grab as they please. So first thing we're going to do here, we're going to create a field for to basically link who created it. So we'll say created by, I'm going to make this as a default. I'm just going to make this our administrator, right? Because, you know, even when we have, and the administrator will always be number one within our database table of users. But yeah, so even if it's created with a form on the web, maybe we could do a side note, you know, is from form or something, you know, it could be a Boolean value, for example, or just with the workflow and everything, that's just the way it'll end up being. So we'll do a name in here. We'll do table, another string, we'll do an email. We're going to do a phone. So I would say at a minimum, we're going to be getting a name and an email from the people we deal with. That's really kind of the basic, you know, like I worked sales for a number of years myself. And when I add a lead or when somebody comes in, fills out something on the form, I mean, they're not really serious unless it's accompanied by an email. I mean, I guess if they want to be jerks, like they could just spam you with a fake email if they're just kind of testing out your system and vulnerabilities and whatnot. But table, so table string. So these are all going to be strings pretty much. And I'm going to want to do the option of like an extra phone. We're also going to work a little bit with JSON in here. We're not going to use like native MySQL JSON functions because, I mean, obviously that's not used as much. But JSON, you know, storing things in JSON format can be really advantageous because maybe there is more details we want to add about them. We don't want to display everything. Then you know, then we can. I mean, JSON lends itself well to that. If you've worked with MongoDB or some other NoSQL system, then you know what I'm talking about. All right, so we'll do an address in here. Make the address nullable. I mean, you know, we don't just go and give our address away. I mean, it depends on what kind of business you're in too. Like, you might not have to actually have, you know, your users. You might do all your selling over the phone. You may not have to meet them anywhere, for example. I mean, the addresses are good for things like billing, but you know, they could put that in. You know, if you're collecting payments online, I mean, they could put that in at the point of actual purchase. So, but I'm just kind of rambling here. City, so province is, so I'll do province _ state. I mean, I grew up in Canada, so we have provinces. We don't have states like the rest of the world. And then we want to do another string here, and the string is going to be for country. I'm not going to store these as like, you know, values of an ID that goes to a table of countries, things like that. We'll probably, I mean, there's other ways to basically control the input of, you know, what country it is when we actually insert it to make sure that they're entering in a valid country. But you know, for the sake of this, I'm not going to worry about it. So after country, I'm going to want to add a section for notes. So we'll put in, so it'll be text, call this note. So this will be a note that will be created by, say, the user who's actually building it out, or maybe they're entering in the first notes. You know, once they've received the lead, they want to add information about them. But this will be kind of a one-time thing for the note, kind of like an introductory note, right? So, so let's put a note in here. We'll just say for use of users / salespeople, all right, not the prospect. Okay, let's put in a prospect message. So an example of our prospect message might be something, you know, they write for us online in the actual form. So maybe they want to add more information about their project, what they're looking for, things like that. So we'll do this one as nullable. All right, and then we'll just say, you know, this is for prospects use when filling out a form. And we'll give the prospect opportunities to leave information or messages for us. I mean, that is a type of user we want to add something for in this situation. Now, I'm going to use our prospects table is going to be our main table. We're not going to move, say, a prospect over to a clients table or over to an in progress table, things like that. We're going to control that all from here. So we're going to add some Boolean values in here. So first of all, we're going to want to know, is this person a client? Because if we do an estimate, we're going to want to, basically, then state whether or not they're a client, whatever, if you sell the job. As a default, we're going to give that 0 or false. Okay. Another thing we're going to want to know is, is this claimable? So has this been assigned to somebody? Is it claimable? We'll want basically the administrator to decide, can somebody have this? Can they claim it on their own? Things like that. So, and we could do a default in here. I'll set a default in here of true. Okay, for now. And then we're going to want to say basically who it's assigned to. So, I mean, you may assign it to yourself if you create the lead, in which case we'll give that opportunity to do that on the form when they go into it. In the meantime, we're basically going to default everything so that it is assigned to our administrator in this situation. And last thing we need to do in here is basically, when was it assigned? Like, when was the opportunity created? I mean, we know when the opportunity was created, but when was it actually assigned to somebody? When did it go into the proper workflow? And I mean, we could do kind of as a heads-up display. Maybe the administrator wants to know, what kind of activity has gone on the back end, with his team, who's claimed what, when did they claim it. It'll give them an idea as to who's active. Basically as to who's active that way. So, okay, so let's migrate this, make sure we don't have any errors. Okay, so it looks like we're good there. Let's go back to, we'll create another one. Just going to open up my MySQL. So XAMPP MySQL/bin. And then I'll log into MySQL with root. We'll go use CRM, and then we'll go show tables. I mean, everything should have worked just fine. We'll see what our prospects table actually looks like in this situation. So ID. Okay, so we're looking pretty good there. You know what? I'm going to actually increase the font size of everything in here so you guys can see a little better as we're going through. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to want to do here is probably create a. Let's create a seeder for this now, because we're going to want to automatically, say populate some things. Now we're gonna use something particularly cool. It's a PHP library that comes automatically in the development mode for Laravel, and it's called Faker. So what we want to do here is spectral command prompt, right? We're going to go PHP make seeder, and then the seeder itself we're going to call, what should we call our seeder? We'll call it prospects table seeder. Oh, that's because I got to go artisan. Okay, so let's go down to our prospects table seeder. And what we can do in the prospects table seeder is actually let's create a factory as well for this. So we'll go PHP. This is how we're going to use Faker. Artisan make factory, and then the factory is going to be we'll say prospect factory. Okay. And so you can see up here, yeah, because that showed up right here. So here's how we created our, oh, okay, actually, no, this comes automatically. This automatically comes with Laravel set up for you. So that's not a problem in here. But we're going to do basically the same thing. Faker gives us a lot of, basically a lot of data that we can add in so that it actually looks like, fairly legit data instead of just jumbled up numbers, letters, or us going to the proper work of creating several different names, things like that, which we don't, which we don't particularly want to do. So prospects table seeder. But first we'll go to the prospects factory. We can see it automatically brings in Faker, and let me pull up basically the Faker repository on GitHub. Enough, just go github.com and then just type in Faker up here. It's the first one that shows up, the one that says f/Faker. Okay, and in here we have basically all the documentation for the Faker, or for that for basically all the fields that we can enter in, things like that. And it gives you examples as to how it'll look, things like that. So let's so we'll go back to our prospect factory here, and automatically we have a return statement in there. So there's a few things we need to add in here according to what's already within our database. We're going to do, everything's going to be created by the admin in this situation, so it's going to be basically the ID of 1. We need a name for the actual individual, so this is pretty easy. Everything is the Faker variable, and then we'll do name. We'll put in an email in here, and you can see this really gets pretty cool. So it makes it really easy. So Faker, now we want our email to be unique. So what's going to happen here is within Laravel, it's going to check our database already and make sure that there's there's no other emails that look the same, which is something we would do anyways, because if we do find, so say for example we go to add a prospect, once we set up all those forms and stuff, we're going to want to be able to identify, hey, is this person already in the system? So we might want to either populate a page or use our API and make an AJAX call to then show a list of potential matches, because the reality is, depending on how big the company is, there's that potential for overlap of clientele. And if your salespeople can walk in and say, hey, we've dealt with this person before, these are the notes on them, it's way better than starting over from scratch. And I'm sure the people that you're dealing with would appreciate that too, as to how organized you are potentially as a company, or whoever you're going to be building something like this for. So we did a phone number there. We'll do toll free. It's like a 1-800 number. Just give you ideas to all the options that are out there. Address. We're going to do, oops. We'll say street address. City. We're going to go Faker dash city. Province, state. And then in this case, we'll just go state. I think that's the only one that they actually have in the repository. Country, Faker's country. We'll do a note. So there's some options here we have for generating text. built in with this particular method. There's a method built in. We'll do a max number of characters. Number chars. And we'll set that equal to about 250 characters. So a little bigger than a tweet. All right. And then is client. I'm not going to do anything in there for, say, the, say like the prospect notes, if they filled out a form or anything. Is client, we'll set all of them to false for now. And then we'll start setting them to true once we actually have the ability to, say, create more by means of a form. So is claimable. And that one we're going to set as true. And then for now, everything's going to be assigned to, which should be the default in our schema anyways, to the administrator. And then the date underscore assigned, we're going to give it a random date. And we have a method for that within the Faker library. And so date time, we want it to be a maximum. So we don't want the date to be, say, like, anything later than this very moment that we run it. And time zone, we don't really care about a time zone here per se. This is just data reading. Now, so we've created a factory. So one of the easiest things for us to do now, we can go into our prospects table seeder, and we can say how many times we basically want, we want this to run. So how many times do we want the factory to produce a particular prospect, right? So prospects, so probably gonna have to bring in 2 classes here. All right, we're gonna put 50 prospects in here, and then I'm gonna show you how things like pagination works when we actually populate all that information, because there's a really cool utility that's provided through Laravel already. So, so seeder factory, we don't need to bring in anything for that, but we do need to bring in our prospect. You know what? We haven't actually created our prospect model. Okay. PHP artisan make. Okay. Now this should work for us. Import the class. Okay. And you can see that added the prospect class in here. We're not going to work on, we're not necessarily going to do anything right here. Our prospects don't have information like login information, things like that. I would say, like, when somebody actually becomes a client, then we can easily make them a user, right? But then we're going to give them like a user with very limited privileges and very little access to the information on what's going on, right? So yeah, I mean, there's lots of things we can add. I might not do that in the scope of this tutorial, because I mean that's something that'd be a lot further out. But I mean, maybe I will. We'll see. We'll see how much interest we get from you guys, how many likes and comments, things like that, and that'll kind of decide, basically how far we go. So let's. I think this is the command PHP artisan seed, and then we're going to want to specify our specific table. So seed is not defined. DB seed. Okay, that was the mistake I made. Too many arguments. Prospects table seeder. Let's try this one more time. No. Let's try it again. Let's specify our particular class. See if that works for us. Okay. Something's going on here. Starting to work for us. Unable to locate factory with a name at prospect. So I think this is what this is telling me is we're missing like a class or something somewhere. We're not directing properly to our prospect model within the factory. Let's go back to our prospect factory. We have model. Let's put in prospects, and then let's bring this class in. Not prospect. Okay, let's try this one more time. No, nothing. Column not found. Column not found. Assigned to. Okay, let's go back to our MySQL. Nope. Assigned to. So this is what our prospect table looks like. And I can see I have it as assigned. So the problem I'm running into here is this. Okay. Okay, so let's give that one more shot, see if that actually works for us here. It might not. Yeah, okay. _2 in field list. Make sure I properly did that. Class, prospects table seeder. Ah, okay, my bad. Actually, that was working. That did work. That did work. Okay, so we should actually have, like, I would say 100 results within there. So let's go back here. We'll see how many results we have. So let's say select. We use a select statement. Select name from prospects, and then it'll list all of it. So you can see we have 100 rows in here of prospects, and you can see, like, they're legit names. You know, some of them even have their professional titles or their whatever the case might be, their specific titles, right? So Miss, Professor, Doctor, Mr., so on and so forth. So it looks like a legit table with legit data, and that's the beauty of Faker. So now when we actually view it, it's not gonna, you know, say be bothersome to our eyes or anything that way. So what we're gonna do now, we'll go back to our prospect controller. I'm gonna show you basically the really cool function of pagination that it automatically provides for us. So let's close our prospects table seeder. We don't need that anymore. Our prospect factory we don't need anymore. app.play.php we don't need. Really don't need this one either. We'll go prospects controller. Okay. We're going to pass some data into here. So we'll call this prospects. So we'll name our variable. This is going to be prospect. And we're going to paginate. So this is something that automatically comes with Eloquent. And we can say how many results we want to send over per page. And this is really slick how this works. But we do need to pass this as data into our view. So we'll say prospects, and then prospects will be prospects. Okay. All right. So let's give this a go. Let's see here. So now we'll actually start adding information in here. Now I don't want to, I'm going to add a for each statement, then add some data in here. We're not going to go crazy with the data that we're going to put in here, because of course I don't want to, I don't want to overload that first page, right? I just kind of want basic information like name, email, maybe things like last contacted, things like that. But for now, we're just going to do name, phone, email, and then we'll put in some other stuff in there after. So let's go at for each. Let's get rid of one of these ampersands, and then we'll say at end for each. Okay. Now in here, we're going to take our prospects. That's the variable we passed into our view. We're going to print it out as prospect. Then we're going to say prospect, and then we'll print out the name of that prospect. And then we'll come over here, prospect, and then we'll print out the phone number. And then we'll print out the email. Okay. Okay, so this looks pretty good to me. The only thing that we're missing here is I'd like to do an anchor tag in here. So, oh, we don't want the mistake of having that in there. Control X. And then the anchor tag, I'll just do some inline styles to the anchor tag because I don't want all the text showing up as underline or as blue, things like that. So let's get rid of our text decoration. Decoration, we'll say none in there. And color, we'll just return the color to black. And then for the actual route, we're not going to specify a route right yet. We'll do that once we actually create our actual route. So let's do this. Paginate 10, prospect paginated. Prospect not found, okay. So we'll go back to prospect controller, bring in prospect, import the class, save that. All right, let's try this again. Okay, so we got some issues here with some formatting. And we haven't brought in our paginator either. So let's do some of that here. So let's see what the issue is with the actual formatting. Column, yeah, this is the problem right here. Try to prettify this a little bit. Okay, let's go back and see if that proves it. And that does. Okay. Okay, fantastic. So the only other thing we need to add in here is our pagination. Pagination is really simple. We'll create an extra row for this, for the bottom. Do column dash md dash. Let's say 5. No, it would be an odd number. 5 is, let's do 6. And then let's offset that by 3, basically. And then we'll go, I do want to center the text. This might work for me. I don't know if this will work for me, actually. Let's find out. Now, this is what's going to allow us to actually go to different pages. Let's see how that works for us. Okay, so that doesn't really do 10. Okay, I don't know, there's something up with that. Okay, well, that's good enough for now. And let's put a little margin on the top here. 5 to help clean that up. Okay, perfect. So you hear Herberto Hirth, Henry Barrows, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6. So that's all in here, which is pretty cool, right? And now when we actually click on them, we're going to want to send them out to, say, a particular prospect view. So let's do that next here. So we'll go over to web. We'll basically the same way that we did user, we'll do specifically prospect situation. So it's going to be a get route. We're not submitting, deleting data, anything like that. Prospect, and then we're going to want to put in a specific ID in here. Okay. Prospect, oops. Controller, and then let's go back to our prospect controller. You can see there's probably one that's already built in here. Okay, so right here with show. So we'll use the show method to pull up that specific one. So name, we'll call this one admin.prospect. Have a fun day. Okay, so admin prospect ID. So name admin.prospect. And let's go to prosepcts.blade.php. Route, we named that one admin.prospect. Then we will add in our specific, the specific ID of this one. So I do believe actually. An ID, and then we'll say prospect prospect ID. Okay, so that's how we'll pass. That's how we'll pass that variable, that specific variable over. So within our prospect controller, what we're going to do is we'll say prospect equals prospect find or fail, and then we'll specify the actual ID that it needs to find. And then we'll return the view of our specific prospect view. So this is going to be an admin .prospect. And then the data we'll pass over will be basically prospect, which will be $ prospect there. Okay, so let's create a prospect view to show the individual prospect. We'll go down views, and prospects upload. So we need to do prospect upload.php. All right, perfect. And then we'll extends admin.layouts.app. All right, and then we'll do section. This is going to be our content section in here. And let's, I mean, I could just die dump. I could just die dump all the data, I suppose. Let's just print that out as our prospect data to show that it's actually coming through. In this case, so prospect upload.php. Prospects in here, we set up our route, prospect ID. Okay, so we'll refresh the page here. Page 1. All right, perfect. So that's all the data that's coming through from our database that we can now, that we can now go and display. So the next thing we'll do is we'll create a decent little format for this, pulling in the data, and then we'll look at, say, how we can, from the administrator's point of view, how can we assign this to a list of users? So we'll have to pull in a list of users that we can assign this to and assign it to them. So that'll probably be the next thing. And then we'll add that to the view of the specific user. So when they log in at this point, we'll show them a list of all of the prospects that are assigned to them. And then from there, we might be working with, a particular user view with the user side and the admin side to flush out the functionality between the both of them. So back over in our prospect view itself, we'll start working with, we'll add basically some more cards there. As you can tell, that's my favorite Bootstrap class, is a card. So we got our row in here. We'll make the card itself, say, for the medium-sized screen, we'll do card-md-8, and we'll offset that by 2. All right, and then we'll do .card, .card-header there. So prospect name. If we actually go back to this, I mean, this is how we're referencing it: name, email, phone 2. So just as you see it coming from our database. The only thing I'm probably going to have to change up here is basically who it's assigned to, because we're building out, because we need to show some of the user information, or at least pull the name from the user side. We're going to have to look it up in the database and send that over from the controller. So for now, we'll just add information in here like their contact information, which is going to be email. So you can copy lines down by going like Shift-Alt down. So that's what I'm going to do here for a number of them, because we know there's a number of entries in here. So we'll say phone. This is going to be secondary phone. This will be address. This will be province/state. This will be, we should probably put in city, shouldn't we? I'll just copy this, Shift-Alt down on Windows. We'll say city. That might be pertinent, but that might not. Like if a company only provides service in a specific city, then maybe we want to leave the option to leave that out. But I mean, customizations kind of comes towards the optimization end of the user experience as you build it out. And I know, with working with past clients that I've worked with, often you receive feedback like, we never use this, or hey, can we show this more prominently here or there? And sometimes I'll put on there like the ability for them to change it, to toggle back and forth from something. And then sometimes I won't. It all depends. Yeah, I mean, it really all depends. If you're building a SaaS product that's really quick and easy to deploy, then at that point, you might want to provide those things like, how is it going to look? Can it be branded? Things like that. You'll want to add those options in the back end, the settings, or do it so that when they actually sign up and build out their profile and whatnot, then they can set those at that point. But I mean, that's out of the scope of this. This is kind of like a CRM you would deploy on a client-by-client basis. So, all right, so email, phone, phone 2, if you remember from our database, address, city, province _ state. We want to do country here. Note. Let's change that to note, because notes will be different. Prospect _ message. Claimable. For claimable, we'll do a shorthand if statement here for you. So if claimable equals like true, then we'll want to say yes, it's claimable. Otherwise, it's going to be a big fat no. Okay, and then assign to, I'm going to leave this out for now. Let's test to see if this works for us so far. So we got our note here, note, prospect message claimable, assign to, that shows email. But now what we want to do is we want to pull this actually out from our database as to who that's assigned to. Now we know they're all assigned to the user, but I'm not going to go, I'm not going to pull in the user, basically the authenticated user, and put that in. What we'll do, we'll go back to our prospects controller here, and then we'll say assigned to, and that's going to equal user where user will find. I don't really want to pull in too much data on that particular page. I'd rather just pull out, who it is specifically just by their name, and then create a link to actually go and then assign that user. But this should be fine here. We'll go prospect, and then it's basically going to be the prospect assigned, and that should pull it into us. Okay. We'll add that in here. So we'll say assign to is going to equal $, assigned _to dash name. All right, and let's go back to prospect upload.php, and then let's go assign to. So we don't need to do name because name is inherent in there. So user not found. Big surprise. I didn't bring in our user controller. App user. Okay. Okay, so this should work for us now. Perfect. So assigned to me. Yay, I have a prospect assigned to me. Okay, so basically, just to recap what we did in this one, we created a prospect section. Okay, let me go into the actual editor. We created a prospect controller, and if you remember, the way I created that was using the artisan command. Artisan make controller name, so admin / prospect controller, and then I did -r, which is then going to create basically all of our CRUD functionality here for us. So we have nothing to worry about that way. And then from there, we created some routes in here, an admin prospects route. So we did, the last hour, we've done quite a bit actually. Put that over to index in our controller. Okay, and then we basically passed along all that data from the database for the prospect paginate. So this is a class that is automatically included with eloquent, or I should say a method. So very, very useful. We created that particular view, prospects.blade.php. Down here, prospects as prospect. We use the for each statement to do that. We did set up the link for the route with prospect ID. We did that after the fact. And then, let's see, what else did we do in here? And then for actually adding the pagination tool, the pagination menu there, we did prospects and then prospects links to get that all done and taken care of. So, yeah, and then linking out here, admin.prospect, we passed in the ID from that individual prospect ID. We created a route for that. Okay, admin prospect ID, we gave that the name of admin.prospect for our route method, and then we directed it to the show method within our prospect controller. Okay. Down here, ID is passed through. We brought in the prospect class, finder fail ID. We assigned that to prospect here. We also pulled out who it was assigned to, so their specific name that it was assigned to. And there's other ways we can build our statement here. Like we could just pull out just name from it that way. But I mean, either way, all we're doing is just passing the name through to be used within that view. So admin.prospect, we created the prospect view here. Okay, some card classes and whatnot. Pass that through. Assign to shows a specific name. And then you know what else I think we'll do in here? Probably something we'll hook up maybe in the next one is the ability to, we're going to want the ability to assign it or to reassign it. So that is something we'll look at in the next one. But for now, let's add a span. And we'll make that a button span with btn-sim.btn-primary to give it kind of a blue color. And then we'll call that assign in there. All right, let's click on this. And then now from here, we're either going to pop up a modal to then be able to assign it, to choose from a list of users from there. And then I think that's the way we'll do it for now. Yeah. All right. So if you guys got any questions, definitely leave some comments down below. Within the show notes here, I'm going to upload everything to a repository in GitHub. So if you are starting from fresh, I know we had one person taking these tutorials. They ended up getting their laptop stolen or something, so they hadn't saved all their progress, so they had to go back, redo the tutorials, things like that, which isn't actually a bad thing. If you're listening, you know that that stuff is going to stick in your head a lot better having done it more than once, and you're probably going to fly through those first few tutorials anyways, because you're a lot more familiar with it. So, all right, thanks for watching, and like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.